You guys are one amazing sounding choir. I will tell you that. You've not lived until you've sat at the front of a building like this and can be on this side of that many people singing. Absolutely beautiful. Wow. Yeah. This is something else. I will tell you, Pastor Terry, wherever you're sitting, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You guys for sacrificing the time and being here today. You sound great. Thank you. Randy Fox. I just leaned over to my dad. I said, Randy and I haven't talked for probably 3 or 4 weeks. I was home at Christmas for a bit. And what he shared about Mom up here, some of the things that he has really remembered about Mom and that the staff have really remembered. It's going to be a lot of repetition, which is really cool, I think, because we knew my mom in a very similar way. It just blows me away, the way that this has come together. You guys, wow. Wow, wow, wow. I know the dad kind of wants to be up there too. So, thank you very much, very much. This is a really cool party, I'll tell you that. We should do this at a house sometime, I think. Be a little different than doing it here. But that's all right. On behalf of my father, Russell, my sister, Rebecca, my grandmother, and our entire family that's here today, thank you very much for being here with us. There's no way that I can fully express how blessed we have felt as a family because of the support that you have shown us, not only over the past few days, but also over the past few months and the past few years. As I look around this sanctuary, I can see many people who are very dear to my mom. Some of you knew Mom through this church. Some of you knew her as your teacher or colleague at Devon Park Christian School. Some of you knew her through one of the countless groups that she was involved in. To my father, she was a wife and a best friend. To my sister and I, she was a mother and a best friend. To all of you who knew her, she was at the very least a friend who loved and who laughed and who would always put others ahead of herself. I could stand here for hours, if not days, sharing stories about my mother. And during the visitation yesterday, my family was able to hear even more stories about how my mom's life touched so many of yours. And again, it has been such a blessing for you to share those stories with us, and we thank you. But I do want to share one of my favorite memories about my mom, and it happened in 2000 when I was working in the United States. The job that I had meant that I'd be traveling around the States for about 8 months, and I was 18 years old, and this was the first time that I'd ever really been away from home. I could tell Mom was pretty nervous about me going out on my own. The job started in Dallas, so my parents drove me down to Bangor for my flight out. And on the drive down, I remember Mom turning around saying, I was sitting in the back of the car, she said, "Now be careful when you're driving in the States, because I've heard that sometimes when they pull people over down there, they'll arrest them right away. No questions asked." I remember laughing, and I said to Mom, "Don't believe everything you hear on Live at 5, Mom." I also did what every good son should do, and for any young sons in here, I would highly recommend that you promise your mother that you will not end up in jail. And I know you're thinking you know where this story is going from here. I assure you that I did not end up in jail. A few months later, I was driving in the Central States when I received my first of 3 speeding tickets as a Canadian in America, and I, like most young guys my age, decided that I'd probably be smarter to not tell my parents about the tickets. After that, I pretty much forgot about the tickets. A few weeks later, I found myself bored out of my mind while I was sitting in a hotel room in Atlanta, and for some crazy reason, I ended up on the White House website. I can't even tell you why. I was that bored. And I found a link that said, "Email the First Lady." Well, if you know me, I was not going to pass this up. So I sent an email to Hillary Clinton and then forgot about it. A couple of months later, I remember calling my mom when we were in California. And I'd always tried to call at least once a week so that she knew that I was okay. This one time, Mom answered the phone and we talked for a while, and I told her about where we had been and about how things were going. She told me about how things were at home. And after a bit, I asked her to check to see if there was any mail for me. She said she'd check with my dad. She came back to the phone, but I could tell that something was different. She was a little bit nervous this time. After a few seconds, she finally said that there was a letter for me from the Department of Motor Vehicles from New Brunswick. I said, "Oh, okay, well, I'll open it up." Mom was quiet for about a minute, and then she said, "Richard, did you get a speeding ticket?" By this time, I had received 3 speeding tickets. I said, "Yes, Mom, I got a speeding ticket. I'm sorry. Try to be more careful." She said that it was a letter from the Department of Transportation saying that I had lost 3 points off my license. Well, we kept talking, but I could still tell that something was really, really bothering her, and I couldn't figure out what it was. Finally, I said, "Mom, what is wrong?" After a long pause, she said, "Richard, there's another letter for you." "Okay." It's from the White House. It's the White House. Thought she was joking. I had totally forgotten. I said, all right. Thinking in my head, I'll play along. I'll open it up. And after a couple minutes, Mom finally took a deep breath and laughed. And she said, in a very confused way, it's an autographed picture of Hillary Clinton. And if you think that this story is too far-fetched, when I came back from the United States, this was on the head of my bed. And I assure you that this is in no way a political endorsement for '08. Don't know if I should put a picture of Hillary Clinton on this chair behind me or not. I apologize if that offends anybody. The reason I wanted to tell this story today is because it is one of my favorite memories that I've shared with Mom, but I think it shows a lot about who my mother was. I remember being a kid and waiting at home on stormy nights for my dad to come home from work when he was working in Boys Town, which is about an hour outside of Fredericton. And on a stormy night, I could always tell by my mom's face that she was very concerned. And I remember her praying out loud no matter where she was in the house. Maybe she'd be in the kitchen doing something. Maybe she'd be walking into her room. But I remember a few times just hearing her pray, Lord, he's in your care. Just get him home safely. My sister could tell you similar stories about when she was growing up, and even up to a couple years ago when she was doing missions work in the Congo. Above all else, Mom wanted to know that our family was safe, but she knew that ultimately we were in God's care. She surrendered us to God, and she trusted Him to keep us. It's one thing to know that you've been blessed with amazing parents, but for my sister and I, that blessing is only increased when we remember that our parents chose us. Both my sister and I are adopted, and Mom's health problems meant that she wasn't able to have children that were biologically hers. And it might sound funny, but my sister and I are very, very glad that she couldn't. We always knew that we were adopted, but it was never an issue. And I don't even think I knew what adopted meant for a lot longer than most people my age, when they would have found the meaning of that word, because it just didn't matter to me. We were their kids, they were our parents. And my sister and I have never had a reason, not even for a second, to question whether our parents loved us. Mom and Dad held firm to Proverbs 22, verse 6. And it says, train a child in the way that he should go, and when he is old, he will not turn from it. And it's interesting that this proverb doesn't say, train your child. This isn't just a proverb directed to parents, it's a proverb directed to the church, to work as a whole in the raising of children. This is something that this church did in our family, and I also know that my parents have been able to help many others, many who are sitting in this room this afternoon, in the raising of their children. My parents were married at the front of this church on July 3rd, 1971, just a couple feet ahead of where I'm standing. And Dad would always joke that he was Mom's birthday gift because July 3rd is also my mother's birthday. Mom would always agree, and I would always joke that Dad would be in twice as much trouble if he ever forgot Mom's birthday. But he never did. 5 years after they were married, it's another key moment in our family, at the very front of this church again, when my parents dedicated my sister. And 5 years after that, again, they stood at the front of this church and dedicated me.